What's up, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, Nvidia, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. We'll talk about why tomorrow is going to be an absolutely wild day as we have Nvidia's earnings coming out, not to mention new pieces of data. I'm also going to talk about what the charts are suggesting, but just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Moomoo link. If you deposit $100, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks. If you deposit $2,000, you're guaranteed 30, not to mention 8.1% APY in uninvested cash. The offer ends at the end of March. Anyways, let's talk about what's happening with the markets. Looking at SPY, we're seeing this downtrend that's continuing. We saw this thing try to push in the morning only to get a big rejection, and we're continuing to make lower highs and lower lows. But at the very end of the day, we saw this trend line try to hold as SPY grabbed liquidity around this 589 area, and some buyers tried to defend us, once again pushing us back above 595, which is where we are right now. I also called out the possibility of a falling wedge on SPY, the QQQ, ES, NQ, and many other tickers, which could suggest or be indicative of a potential bounce that could be coming with Nvidia's earnings. So I'll talk about whether or not that's probable and what's going to likely happen with this data and news. Then I'll talk about the charts in just a couple of minutes. So just know that for today, we saw big tech sell off again. We saw Nvidia in the red once again. Apple's very, very flat. They did announce they want to invest a lot of money into the US, which is what has been helping it to some extent. And then ever since they made the iPhone announcement, they're still doing a little bit better. But other tech stocks such as like Microsoft, Google, Meta, and etc. were a lot more in the red. We saw Tesla get decimated, down 8% after their European sales numbers were very, very poor. And investigations are continuing by the NHTSA. However, the other sectors are very, very flat right now, very, very mixed, I would say, with retail doing a little bit better. But health in particular is a very, very interesting sector because of what we're seeing involving some news, involving a new virus and factors like that. But anyways, let's talk about what's happening with Nvidia's earnings and our data, and I'll talk about all of this a little bit later on. So tomorrow is going to be Wednesday, February 26th, 2025. Keep in mind, we just have new home sales in the morning around 10 a.m. And besides that, there's nothing else that's too significant. We do have a couple of Fed speakers, such as Bostic giving a speech, but that's pretty much it. Everything is going to be very quiet for tomorrow. However, we do have something very, 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 very big in terms of earnings. So we have Lowe's announcing earnings before market open, and then we have Nvidia after market close, alongside Snow, AI, Salesforce, and Marathon. But the big one's going to be Nvidia. It's going to be a make or break for the markets. Nvidia is either going to launch the market right back up to start bouncing, or we're about to get a massive rug pull and continue to fall. Looking at the setup on Nvidia, we're currently looking a little bit weaker right now. We're on a bit of a downtrend for the last couple of days, but we're going to be watching to see if this support could hold us as we have a possible inverse head and shoulders setup. So I'll talk more about that in a second. What's happening with Nvidia's earnings? They're about to report their Q4 earnings tomorrow. Here's what we are expecting. We're expecting about 84 cents per share for their EPS. Nvidia is the leader in GPU production, which has very, very high demand for AI development and also for the development of many other products when it comes to computers and other factors like that. Very, very awesome stuff. They were looking for a 63% growth year over year. And then for their overall revenue, we're expecting $38.08 billion. That's a rise from 72% relative to the previous quarter, or the same quarter last year, essentially. They only missed earnings once in the last 9 quarters, so just keep that in mind. They do typically beat. There's a very, very good chance they're going to be beating, but that's not enough to really wow investors. We also want to see what we're looking at when it comes to their demand for their chips. Is demand going to remain very, very strong? And also, there's a lot of fears amongst like tariffs and factors like that, so I think Nvidia is going to have to address that. Before earnings have come out, we're getting some good ratings from analysts who are expecting $200 per share. Others are saying it might be running to about $220 per share. So overall, there's a lot of positive expectations, especially when it comes to those who are interested in semiconductors, and then the demand for GPUs that remains. But there is one problem with Nvidia, and let me make this very clear. It's the overall economy, right? We're seeing so much growth, and yes, it's very awesome to see this. Look at their total revenue. It keeps going up and up and up and up, and investors are excited about this. But the thing is, high amounts of growth are not going to be sustainable. So we're not going to see 20 to 30% growth again and again and again every single quarter. Eventually, it's going to slow down, and that's the thing you have to remember. The rate at which they grow will slow down over time. Now, despite that, if they could really wow investors with AI talk, AI demand, it's still very possible we see a very, very nice amount of sentiment. And that's what I'm trying to get at right now. So the problem is the US economy right now. there is a lot of fear amongst investors. People are very, very fearful about demand slowing down, about our economy declining. Today, we got the economic report. The consumer confidence was very, very low because of fears of inflation going up. So that's what I'm trying to get at. We need to see how Nvidia is going to address a lot of these concerns. How is Nvidia going to help investors realize that, look, despite the hardships our economy is going through, despite a potential increase in inflation and tariffs, how will Nvidia keep their demand up, and how are things looking at least for this year? That's what's going to be very, very important for the share price. Please keep that in mind. Now, this is what Nvidia did for the last couple of earnings. You guys can see that ever since like 2023, we only saw the share price dump once after earnings by about 1.46%. Typically, the share price is actually above what we expect. Sometimes it has very, very nice amounts of growth. So, for example, we saw growth after earnings came out in Q1 of 2023. Same thing in Q2. In Q3 of 2023, we got a decline. And since then, we've been seeing more growth than falls for every last quarter. This chart goes up until Q2 of 2024. But for Q3, during the latest Nvidia earnings reports, they actually saw the share price dump to 3.6%. But then all of a sudden, it started to run and went up to about 4.8%. So overall, it was up 4.8% despite a little bit of a sell-off after earnings. Last time, it ended up bouncing very, very nicely. And we saw some amazing growth. So good earnings, at least from the last time they reported things. And that's what helped the share price. So basically, if there's one more bar here for the last quarter that just came out, the last earnings, it would also be up 4%. The majority of times, the last 4 times Nvidia announced earnings, we saw the share price in the green, which is a very, very good sign. But always remember, the past does not guarantee anything about the future. That's going to depend on what they announce for their guidance. That's going to be very, very important, at least for us moving forward from here. So what do I think about the share price? I'm optimistic approaching their earnings. I think there's a good chance we do try to get a bounce, but it's not a guarantee. Maybe I'm like 55% bullish and like 45% bearish, to be like very blunt, a little bit more in favor of upside, but we'll see, guys. We'll see. It's never a guarantee. The last 4 times we got earnings, right, we ended up seeing Nvidia getting a more positive reaction. So we'll see about this time. It's a little bit more complicated with tariffs and factors like that, with tariffs, inflation, and the potential shift in consumer sentiment. So we'll see how it goes. And involving Donald Trump, I just want to say, and this is just a quick reminder about his tariffs. We got the 10% tariff on all Chinese goods that took effect. Now there's a proposed 25% tariff on Canadian Mexican goods for most goods, and then 10% on Canadian energy, and 25% tariffs on steel and aluminum imports. That's supposed to take effect on March 12th. So March 4th should be the Canadian and Mexican tariffs being imposed, and then March 12th is supposed to be when we get the steel and aluminum ones. Well, the reason I'm calling this out is because yesterday Donald Trump made some important announcements. He was talking about his tariffs again, and he said, and I quote, "We are going to go forward." He said he's going forward with the tariffs. He's not backing down, and he's very, very fixated on once again increasing those tariffs. He says, this is what he claimed, Donald Trump has said that the U.S. has been taken advantage of by foreign nations on just about everything, and he reiterated his plan to impose so-called reciprocal tariffs. So he's very fixated on these reciprocal tariffs. The deadline is actually due on April 1st, so keep that in mind. We're not that far away from those. And then he said, once again, so the tariffs will go forward, yes, and we're going to make up a lot of territory. This is according to Donald Trump. So why is this important? Okay, very soon, this is going to be affecting sentiment, prices, and factors like that. Sure, the market already reacted to this, but we'll see what happens once they're officially imposed. The tariffs on Mexico and Canada have been delayed for quite some time. They were supposed to start on February 1st, but they got delayed until March 4th. So we'll see how it goes for them. This is very, very important news, so just keep that in mind. This is something that's going on in the back end. The market's not as focused on that right now. I think that we're getting ready for other things. And with Nvidia taking the spotlight for tomorrow, that's going to be the big factor for us. And then we'll see what happens with Trump's tariffs a little bit later on. Now, let me tell you one thing, okay? Look at sentiment right now. We're at extreme fear. The market's super fearful. People think we're about to crash. That's when you want to be a little bit more careful, because the last couple of times when we started to hit extreme fear, that's when the market started to bounce, when people least expected it. Right now, people think the crash is coming. There's about to be a big dump, which makes me a tiny bit more bullish, right? When everyone's bearish, that's when you try to turn a little bit more bullish, just for the short term, to see if we get a temporary bounce or not. I'm not making promises. I'm just saying that that's what tends to happen. We're seeing momentum at extreme fear. We're very close to our 125 daily moving average. SPX is approaching some very, very big support right now. And then the put to call option ratio is exploding. People are buying puts like crazy. They're shorting the market. They expect there to be a big rug pull. They think we're about to crash. We're seeing more of these shorts. The VIX is breaking out to 20. It adds a very, very tough resistance. We've never seen it actually really surpass this resistance since like December of last year. There's only one instance where that happened. So we're in a very, very fearful place. There's a lot of fear in the markets. People are expecting more downside. One more thing about those pharmaceutical stocks is the fact that there has been that new virus discovered in China, but there's no known cases for it to be affecting humans. It was just discovered in a lab. That's very important. This is another variant of a virus. If this spreads or if anything happens like for the next couple of months, if there's anything like this, that could cause a very, very big move for many of these vaccine stocks like Pfizer, Moderna. That's why we're seeing health doing a little bit better right now. So we'll see what happens with this. So far, there's no known cases for humans, so we're fine right now. Anyways, enough about all the news. The news is very crazy and wild. Let's focus on the charts now. We're gonna start off with Nvidia, then I'll talk about SPY and the others, and then the rest of the individual tickers. So here's what's going on with Nvidia. Tomorrow, what's going to happen is this. We're going to likely see some consolidation, and then it's all dependent on earnings. If we get a good earnings and they end up announcing solid growth and we see Jensen Huang hype up investors involving AI, then I'm looking for this inverse head and shoulder setup for a full recovery back up to these highs at the very least or above. Nvidia could be launching right back up for an inverse head and shoulders. Okay, so if we base at 126 and we get a big bounce and Jensen Huang really pumps the stock, this could start going right back up. However, that's not a guarantee. That's never guaranteed. So you want to have a backup plan in case things go south. If we lose 125-ish and we get some bad news, let's just say that Jensen Huang and them tell us that guidance will not be as strong as predicted because of tariffs or whatever it is, right? If there's hypothetically some bad news, there's going to be a risk of Nvidia dumping all the way down towards under 120. There's going to be a big dump coming if that ends up happening. So we could go either way, but I do want to mention that approaching this earnings, we've already sold off quite a bit. We were at 143 just a couple of days ago. About a week ago, we were at 143-ish, and now we're all the way down to about 126. So my point is, we sold off very, very hard already. And the last 4 times Nvidia announced earnings, we actually ended up in the green. So I'm hoping we see green. I do lean a tiny bit more in favor of this, but I can't make promises, guys. I can't promise anything. It all depends on earnings. I'm not some kind of fortune teller. I don't know for sure what's going to happen. That's why I would say to just always manage risks no matter what. But I am leaning a tiny bit more bullish, okay? But don't throw stones at me in case I'm wrong. I'm just telling you guys what I think is more probable. It all depends, so we'll see. For now, I do lean a little bit more in favor of a bullish move. I think that Jensen Huang is going to continue to insist that the company is doing fine. There's high demand for their chips, and they're going to continue to expand production. And with the Blackwell expansion that's been going on, that's going to be very, very good for them. So I think there's a better chance we try to bounce. We'll see about that. What else makes me say that is look at SPY right now. So when you zoom out, okay, this is what the chart looks like. We've been kind of stuck in our range last couple of months, going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth with all this tariff talk, with all these fears emerging. Now, for the last couple of days, SPY has been making a lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low over and over again. But then notice that we're at a very, very big support. So this support near 590. SPY kissed this and bounced. It touched this and bounced. We did the same thing today. We just touched 589, then we bounced off of that. So we're doing a great job. When you look at the daily time frame, a lot of people are probably suspecting we're going to be coming down to fill this gap around 584. If we don't end up holding 589, and if Nvidia does poorly with earnings, I think we fill the gap to 584. There's going to be a big rug pull. If Nvidia does very, very well with earnings, it's going to be the opposite. Now, remember, the market's super fearful. People are expecting a crash. There's a lot of fear. The fear is taking over right now. Okay. And then we also have a falling wedge. Typically, these do lead to bullish outcomes, which is why I'm a tiny bit more bullish. I'm leaning like 55% bullish and 45% bearish. That's my opinion. I could be wrong though. So that's what I'm seeing. If we get some kind of like move like this tomorrow where we maintain this wedge, then we get a breakout on Wednesday like this, and then we dip like this. And if Nvidia does very, very well with earnings, I'm looking for an attempt to get back up to 602 to 605 for a short squeeze, right? People are buying lots of puts right now. We're seeing lots of bearish order flow, and we're seeing lots and lots of fear subsiding, not subsiding, but growing in the markets. So that could be a sign this is about to see a very monstrous bounce off this falling wedge, right? Nvidia could be the catalyst for that. If not, if Nvidia does poorly with earnings and things don't go well, if we end up losing 589, then yes, I think we fill the gap all the way down to 584 or below, which is quite a distance away from here. Could go either way, okay, but I am leaning a little bit more in favor of this, some kind of like bounce, like move and a rebound. I lean a little bit more in favor of that. We'll see, just to be safe, but that's what I'm seeing at least thus far. The QQQ has the same thing, right? When you look at the QQQ, there's a lot of fear right now. People are expecting us to dump to these lows. 500 should be coming. This is going to be making a bigger move than SPY because it's going to be reacting to Nvidia, and also the entire tech sector is going to react to it. Nvidia it has a big effect on Microsoft, not to mention Tesla, believe it or not. So if we do really, really poorly with Nvidia, this could dump below 506 to the low 500s. Okay. If Nvidia does well and surprises a lot of these people, we could be looking for a move back up above 525 or above for the QQQ, a very monstrous squeeze. There's a falling wedge developing on it, so I do favor upside a little bit more, but we'll see just to be safe. Notice that the Russell 2000 is also holding support right here. We're holding 214. We're at this key support. The last times we've hit 214, we bounced. We're at a very, very strong support. So, yes, anything could happen. You never know what's about to happen. I think we could draw out a wedge here. I'm going to double check this just to be safe. We have kind of like a wedge-like pattern. It's not perfect looking, but it's always a possibility. But with this wedge, it's the same confluence as well as this like 4-hour PPO. So I think that if we do poorly with Nvidia, we want to see this thing lose 214 to start dumping towards this trend line into the 210s. If we do well, we're looking for a breakout past 218 to 220. There's a good chance we try to get that breakout, so we'll see just to be safe. But just keep that in mind for now. That's what I'm essentially eyeing, so please be very, very patient, guys. For others out there, we also have ES. ES is looking a little bit more, I would say a little bit more solid than its counterparts. We've been dumping really hard, but notice the 4 hours starting to turn, and we formed this big wick here, which is like a liquidity grab. So what typically happens is if we're bearish, we want to see this lose 59.50. If that fails us, I'm looking for a dump towards the low 5900s. If we're bullish, you want to see us continue to hold above this support, start breaking out above 6,000, okay? I'm leaning in favor of us trying to push above 6,000, looking at this falling wedge. We'll see just to be safe. Same thing with NQ. If you're bearish, you want to see us lose 21,000. If Nvidia does poorly, we need to lose that. If Nvidia does well, and I really hope we do, we're looking for an attempt to get back above 21,500. There's a falling wedge, which does favor upside. We'll see just to be safe. Bitcoin's also dumping quite a bit. It dumped so much. We actually hit our daily 200 EMA. I would like to see this reclaim 90,000 to bounce, so we'll see if that ends up being the case. Like I said about Nvidia, it's a make or break for the markets. We do have an inverse head and shoulders like pattern. Is it a coincidence or not? We'll have to see. But for now, this is looking like it has potential. For Tesla, unfortunately, okay, what I don't like about the chart is the fact that we're making lower highs and lower lows over and over again. But notice that we're very close to this lower trend line. What do I mean by that? This is our channel. We hit this trend line here, bounced. We dipped. Eventually, we touched the trend line. We bounced. We're near the trend line right here. So as long as Tesla is below like 325, I think we continue to downtrend. But it's possible that if we could hold 300, we get a temporary bounce first before it continues to fall, to fill that gap all the way down to about 275 to 250. I think we will fill the gap to 250 soon. I still lean in a bit more in that direction. There's a lot of fear involving Tesla, but we'll see if we get a temporary bounce first before anything. So just keep that in mind. That's going to be very key for how we end up moving. So like I said before, we're watching to see can Tesla base at 300. It's a very psychological level. We also happen to be at this trend line that's also very close to our daily 200 EMA. If that holds, we could be looking for a rebound move before it continues to dip. So just keep that in mind. For Apple, we have a nice bullish setup. We're making higher highs and higher lows. As long as we don't lose 245, we could try to bounce for 250 or above. So keep that in mind as well. Netflix is on a bit of a downtrend. We're going to be looking to see this support around 950 to see if that holds. As long as we're above this, we could be looking for 990 to be retested as it has potential. MSTR has been dumping very hard. We're looking for that psychological 250. It does look a little bit more bearish. It could dip towards like 245 before it tries to bounce. So keep that in mind. Celsius is dumping right here. We're looking for support at 26.5. If that fails us, I'm looking for 25. And we'll see if we bounce or not, but I am seeing some downside potential. Supermicro's on a bit of a downtrend move right here. We're trying to bounce, which is a good sign. I think that we had a very, very important SEC filing date that was due. Their financials were due because they reported them. It's trying to bounce. So I think that this could be looking for essentially 60 as a potential target, looking a little bit better. Um, Looking at Palantir on a bit of a downtrend, we basically came very close to filling that gap. We'll see if we get a bounce or not. If we lose 80, I'm remaining bearish. As long as we're above 80, we could try to bounce back up for like 90 plus, 92 plus. Rivian's on a bit of a downtrend. We're near support around that 11.5 area, the exact level I called out yesterday. If we could hold that, I'm looking for a bounce back up to 12. If not, we dump more. We'll see about that. SoFi is looking a little bouncy here. I'll see if we get back above 14.5 or not. So give it that some time. AMT's on a bit of a downtrend. It's still continuing to downtrend. There's no sign of a bounce yet. We're very close to the psychological 100 area. Maybe we touch that before it tries to rebound, but it's going to be reacting to Nvidia, so it could go either way. ARM is also looking a little bit more bearish. We're looking to see if we could hold support right here around 135, if not around that 128 area. So we'll see if we bounce. For coin, we're on a bit of a downtrend, but I do want to mention that just like Bitcoin's trying to rebound a little bit, we'll see if we get back above this resistance around that 216 area. If we reclaim this, I'm looking for the 220s, so keep that in mind. Amazon, I want to see it reclaim 215 to bounce. We have previous resistance becoming support here. So 215 is going to be a big resistance if that breaks. We're going to get back to this trend line up here for essentially the 218s. So watch for a test of 215 tomorrow. We'll see if we bounce or not. Meta needs to hold 657. If that holds, we're looking for a bounce for 674. It dumped quite a bit without much of a bounce, so I would like to see it bounce first before it comes back down. Microsoft has a falling wedge, which is a good sign. If that breaks, we're looking for an attempt for about 404. We need to reclaim 400, though it's still kind of weak. Same thing with Google. We're on a bit of a downtrend. We're going to be watching to see if 178 holds or not, so just keep that in mind as well. That being said, I went over the majority of these, just a few more. We have GameStop with the head and shoulders, looking to see if support holds at 24 or not. AMC has this wick that from it's very flat right now after earnings just came out, very flat still. We're going to be watching to see if this could base at 3.1 to 3 before it tries to bounce. DJT's on a bit of a downtrend move. We're looking for essentially 22, so watch to see what kind of reaction we get. The VIX is trying to break out here, but we're going to be watching to see if the VIX turns or not. The last time the VIX was between 20 and 22, the 22, so we did reject. We hit 21.5 today. Notice that it's a tough resistance. So since December is when we went up to almost 30 and we rejected. But notice that the VIX does not tend to just explode. What tends to happen is it pumps and dumps. We pumped to 22 and rejected. We pumped to 22 and rejected. We pumped to 20 and then rejected. And now we're at 21.5. Are we going to reject here? That's what has been happening this entire year. So we'll see. Could this be a sign that the VIX is about to reject and dump as the market tries to bounce? We'll see about that. The 10 years continuing to fall. And then so is the dollar. They're still bearish. Could this be a sign the market's going to bounce? We'll see, just to be safe. So it all depends on Nvidia. Is Nvidia going to be the superhero that saves this market at least temporarily and gives us some kind of bounce? Or is the market about to see a massive rug pull from here to fill the gap down below? Either one of those possibilities are probable, but just know I do lean a little bit more in favor of upside, considering that that Nvidia's history is, for the last 4 quarters, we did end up seeing a very positive reaction with good guidance, and also considering the fact that Nvidia is, it already sold off quite a bit approaching earnings, and we have an inverse head and shoulders setup, so multiple bullish setups on Nvidia, on SPY, ES, and the others make me a little bit more in favor of bulls. But once again, I'm not a fortune teller. I don't know for sure what's going to happen, so we'll see, just to be safe. Thank you for listening, guys. Manage risks, do what you have to do, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Thank you for listening, and peace out.